inquiry into Hazelwood mine fire is now in session.
The first witness this afternoon is Doug Steely. I call Mr. Steely.
Please state your full name.
Douglas Richard Steely.
Please repeat after me. I do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm
I do solemnly declare and confirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
to this Board of Inquiry
to this Board of Inquiry
will be the truth,
will be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Afternoon, Mr. Steely. Can you confirm for us, please, your full name is Doug, presumably Douglas Steely?
Douglas, yes.
Steely, S-T-E-L-E-Y.
Yes.
And you live in Hayfield. Can you give the inquiry your address? And you're one of the rare people that's moved from Queensland to Victoria, I see.
For health reasons.
For health reasons. Other Victorians went north for health reasons. Since 2010, you've lived in Victoria in the Latrobe
Correct.
Valley.
Yes.
Mr. Steely, for the purpose of the inquiry, you have prepared a witness statement of some 41 paragraphs. Is that the case?
Correct.
Yes. And have you read through the statement before coming along to give evidence today?
To the best of my ability, I'm dyslexic, so I have problems with reading and writing, but yes, I've read through.
Okay. Do you need it read to you? No, you're quite comfortable with that. In the course of reading through your statement, you noticed that there's an issue with the times of the photos that you took. Is that
I did.
right?
I went back and checked my camera, and
Yes.
I don't believe that I had changed it to Eastern Daylight Time, so the time stated would be Eastern Standard Time.
All right. We won't go through each of them, but does that mean that, for example, if we look at paragraph 12 of the statement, you give a time of taking a photo 12:45 a.m. on the 10th of February 2014. Should that be 11:45 p.m. on the 9th of February?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay.
And just subtract 1 hour.
Subtract an hour from each of the times, and I don't think we need to go through each of those unless the board would require that. No. With that change being made, Mr. Steely, are the contents of your statement true and correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, I'll tender the statement.
Yes, that will be Exhibit 24.
A little about your background, Mr. Steely, before I ask you some questions about your experience on the 9th and 10th of February this year. You are now retired, having previously worked as a professional photographer for the Air Force and at the University of Central Queensland.
Correct.
How many years did you work as a photographer?
Probably close to 40 years.
You are a member of the, is COAR the correct pronunciation?
Yes.
COAR CFA Brigade in the Thompson Group, and you also respond with the Hayfield Brigade, is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And you went through the minimum skills CFA volunteers course in 2010. That's the mandatory minimum
Yes.
skills course. And what's the duration of that course? Can you just describe it to the inquiry, please? How long it takes and broadly what it is? What are the skills that you pick up?
It's not a particularly formal course.
No.
It's run by the brigades to make sure that you're safe to go on the tanker and that you're not going to be a danger to yourself and to others. You pick up the minimum skills required to turn out to a fire. The main training comes after you've done that. Once you start responding to fires, you learn what to do. It's self-protection, self-training and how to work, and it gives the brigade a chance to assess the volunteer.
Yes.
As much as train them.
You learn about things like maintaining a minimum quantity of water in the tanker so that it can be used for self-protection in the event of an emergency, and skills along those lines. As with most areas of life, you learn more doing it than in the classroom, if I can put it that way.
Can I just point out that I did the similar fire training with the Air Force, and I was also a member of the counter-disaster team with the universities.
Right. Did you have any experience in emergency management in either of those previous roles, as in hands-on experience?
Not formally, but yes, on occasions.
Okay. And presumably some experience of appropriate structures for responding to emergencies.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Again, aside, my wife was a counter-disaster person with SES, moved into occupational health and safety nursing, and my son is a safety officer in the mines in Western Australia. So safety and procedures is a fairly common dinner time conversation in our house.
So you've picked up what you know from that conversation.
More from the people over a dinner table than formal training.
Indeed. However, one thing you hadn't experienced before the 9th of February this year was fighting a coal mine fire.
Correct.
And you hadn't done any training at the mine. How far is Hayfield from Morwell? Approximately, you able to...
45 minutes drive.
Okay. Now, you were on call on the 9th of February of this year on reserve duty at the Hayfield Fire Station. No doubt aware that the 9th of February was an extreme fire risk day throughout Victoria, and including in Gippsland.
Yes.
And you would have been presumably, if not expecting, then certainly weren't going to be surprised if you were called out on the 9th of February.
It was extremely worrying because of the lack of equipment that was available in our area.
Right.
To my knowledge, the area to the north between Traralgon and Sale had about 3 to 4 tankers to protect a huge area. All of our resources had been stripped to fight the fires that were going in the Morwell area. If a fire had started in the Hayfield, Lycola, Maffra area, there would have been, on a day like that, the minimum turnout of tankers would be 5 tankers. The closest available tankers, or the only available tankers that I know of, were Maffra, Sale and Hayfield, which were crewing the Glen Maggie tanker on the day, so we would have had an initial turnout of 3 tankers.
Right. Now, a call did come in. Before I say that, you were aware sometime during the afternoon that there was a fire in the mine at Hazelwood?
We're monitoring it on the radios.
Yes. And you received a call to go into the Traralgon fire station at 8 o'clock that night, and you turned out with one other tanker. Is that right? There are two tankers in your contingent?
2 of us, Ken Walker and myself, responded from Cowar Brigade.
Yes. We
met up at the Traralgon fire station where we were given the Gormandale tanker.
Yes.
We waited till the Flynn tanker arrived. One of the Flynn crew came with us on the Gormandale tanker, and we went as a unit of two tankers.
So 3 on your tanker?
3 on the Flynn tanker.
3 on the Flynn tanker. Not ideal, meant to be 4, is that right? Or is there no rule?
There's no hard and fast rules.
I see.
Especially when
there's an emergency, I understand. Okay. You got to the Hazelwood mine at about 10 o'clock. You say you got to the main entrance. Do you recall if that was the Broadrib Road entrance? Does that mean anything to you?
No, it doesn't.
Perhaps we'll put an aerial photograph of the mine up and see if you're able to assist us. I think it's well understood and common ground in the inquiry, Mr. Steele, that the main entrance is towards the bottom right-hand
The
corner.
one
near the power station.
Near the power station.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's you can see it's a main entrance. It's got
Yep.
boom gates. It's manned and so on. And no difficulty gaining access through the entrance.
A lot more difficulty than I would have expected given the situation.
Right.
That we were a fire tanker and the mine was on fire. I stayed with the tanker, but the driver and the incident, or the person in the front seat, went over and probably a 10-minute discussion with the guards as they phoned and tried to find out what was going on and whether we could come in or not. We just sat there shaking our heads saying, well, you know, what the hell's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually they got a word back that we were allowed in, but they didn't have any real idea of where we were supposed to go or what we were supposed to do.
All right. Hence your description in paragraph 8 of the situation as chaos.
Fairly good summation of that.
In explanation of that, you say the power was out, and so torchlight was the best available way
Torchlight,
of
they had a generator boom light, one of those big sort of road construction generator boom light shining in through the window of the room where they were doing the briefings.
Right, and that was my next question. There was a briefing, was there?
There was a brief briefing, yes.
Yeah, brief briefing. And who was conducting that as you understood it? Was it a CFA person or a mines person?
No idea.
You don't know?
They didn't identify themselves.
All right. During the course of the briefing, you were provided, you do say in your statement of paragraph 10 that it was someone from the Hazelwood mine. Does that assist you to recall?
There were people from the Hazelwood mine there,
Right.
but again, I wouldn't be able to say who they were or who they were working for at the
Was
time.
anyone identifiable as an emergency commander by a tabard or vest or something along
No.
those lines? All right. Were there other people from the CFA there, either volunteer or career, at that time?
There were people coming and going all over the place.
Right. Pete, you were no doubt in CFA
I was
overalls?
Yeah.
Did you notice others in CFA uniforms apart from...
There were crews there,
Yes.
but the people giving the briefing appeared to be in civilian clothes.
Okay. And no doubt from both your experience and your training, you're familiar with the concept of an incident controller.
Yes.
In relation to emergency. So far as you're aware, was there an incident controller?
Not that I saw at the time.
Okay. You were provided with what you describe as a mud map. Was it a hand-drawn...
Hand-drawn map on an A3 sheet of paper.
Right. And presumably that was retained by the driver, was it, of your tanker? No.
That was being used for the briefing, so that stayed at the office. We were given rough directions of where we were to go and what we were to do, and an escort to take us to the area.
Okay. Was the escort an employee of the mine, as you understood
Yes.
it? And driving, presumably, a vehicle?
Four-wheel drive. yeah.
Four-wheel drive, and led you and your two tankers.
Two tankers, yeah.
To the northeast area of the mine near the briquette factory. Is that the Energy Bricks factory? Do you know if that's what it's called?
Again, I don't know.
All right,
If
we might get
can-
that. You'll get the photo up. See if you can direct us.
We were working around these buildings here and this area here.
Right, so you're pointing to the northeast corner of the mine, adjacent to the ash pond. That triangular shape there in the corner there is known as the ash pond or the Hara pond. I'll ask you to take my word for
It was dark and
Yep, sure. And you were tasked with fighting fires on some power poles that you understood to be important in the supply of power to the operational part of the mine. Is that right? Now, in the course of your time at the mine, you, no doubt utilising your skills with the camera, took some photos which you've included in your statement. Perhaps we'll look at a couple of those. The first one is below paragraph 12, just come up on the screen there. You say you took that photo as you were leaving the assembly point. The assembly point was in the vicinity of the main gate that you entered earlier.
Oh, not the main gate, but the main assembly area.
Right. Where was that relative to the... Sorry, can we get the aerial photo back up? There we are. Where was the assembly area? I should have asked you.
That would be the buildings and car park there, I believe.
Right, so you're pointing to an area next to a large clay-capped area in the southeast area of the mine.
Yep. The photos are looking up. You can see the lights of Morwell in the background.
Yep, so if we just... we've got the photo now. So the perspective is looking pretty well north.
Yep.
Yep, and you're standing... is it on the southern batters? Is that
on
that
the southern
correct? On the
southern
batters?
side? Yep.
Yep. And can you describe in your statement the fire that was alight on the northern batters? Could you just point that out for us, please?
There's
So
fire
that's
running along there. Fire up here. Of course, fire down there. Fire in the central area.
and fire in the central floor of the
Yep.
mine. And then you point out that in the distance you can just make out the lights of Morwell beyond the freeway.
If you have a look at the original, they're quite clear.
And the original, they're clear. Yeah. Can you just point out with the ruler where that area there? Yes, thank you. Through the smoke. I gather there was a large amount of smoke in the mine.
It wasn't obvious at night. You know, it was definitely there.
Yes.
After dawn, you know, you couldn't see any of.
Might go down to image number 2, please. This is a picture you took facing in a northwest direction from the same
Exactly
position?
the same location.
Right, further
just,
around to the
just
west?
turning slightly to the west.
Yes.
To the east.
I see. So that fire we can see on the very left-hand side in the middle of the photo, that's the northern batters there, is that right? Over there?
Northern batters.
Yes.
Lights of Morwell. Eastern side of the mine. That, if you go back to the last photo, photo 1.
Photo 1. That's that pole.
That telegraph pole there. You can scroll up.
Yeah, back to photo 2.
Sorry. That's photo 1.
Yeah, to 2. Yep. Is that?
That telegraph pole there, or
Thank you.
power pole.
And then we can just perhaps quickly go to the third image, which once again is taken from the same
location. Yep.
And we can see the
Power pole.
yes, we can see the fire on the floor of the mine.
Looking more into the floor of the mine.
Yes, and once again the northern
Northern
batters fire,
Yep.
and you can clearly see the lights of Morwell. Yes, is that right?
Correct.
Thank you. Now you did some work addressing the power pole fire.
Yes.
And you say at paragraph 17, I want to ask you about the radio communications issue. You say that your UHF radio was not working. Just before asking you about that, was any information provided to you at the briefing about communications arrangements or a communications plan?
Not to me. I wasn't. I was the bloke in the back of the tanker.
Yes.
Being dyslexic, I dislike using radios or being instant controller, so it wasn't a priority of mine to be included in that area of the briefing, but I didn't hear of any.
All right. Did you find out on the night, or have you found out subsequently why your radio communications weren't working?
No.
Right.
Gormandale tanker wasn't our tanker. We were just given that tanker. We worked on it for 12 hours and then gave it back.
I see.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting by that maybe it was a lack of familiarity with the equipment that might have been
No,
a problem?
there was no working radio in it.
Oh, I see. All right. and that obviously meant you couldn't
Well,
contact...
there was a working CFA radio in it,
Yes.
but the UHF is the small unit that you just use to talk between tankers.
Yes.
You know, turning left here, going back for water.
So does that mean through the CFA radio you were able to communicate with base? Is that right? Or
My understanding is no, there wasn't an actual base radio set up
right.
at that stage. At a later stage in the evening, there was a CFA communications van arrived and communications started, but communications during the first part of the evening were quite sporadic.
Okay. Now, after some time the power came back on, you think that was about 1 or 2 a.m.
Yep.
That's consistent generally with the other evidence
Yep.
the inquiry has heard. And you went back to the assembly point. Were you directed to go back to the assembly point, or had you completed the tasks assigned to you? What was the reason for going back to the assembly point?
We'd basically completed the tasks we were assigned. We'd put out the fire on the pole. We'd extinguished all the spot fires that we could find. There was one fire burning down near the bridge that we pumped a whole lot of foam on. We emptied basically 3,500, or 2 tankers, so it would have been 7,000 litres of water and foam onto it. It was still burning, but it wasn't going anywhere, so we just left that to the morning crews. It was far too dark to try and put somebody down there.
When you went back to the assembly point, there were some mine workers coming in for a shift change, is that right? And did the mine workers talk to you, or did you overhear the conversations that you summarised?
They were talking directly to me.
Were they?
We were talking to them
Right.
about what was going on, and they were particularly unhappy with the whole situation. They were not happy gentlemen.
Now, I take it you don't know the names of any of those gentlemen. What is it they were unhappy about?
The fire, the lack of fire suppression gear. It was pointed out that this wouldn't have happened if they had left the $8 million worth of fire suppression gear that was already set up and running in the mine. One of them said the company shouldn't have taken it out and sold it for scrap metal. Other people said the company had decided it was too expensive to cover the batters in clay, as should have been done. Others mentioned how much the firefighting ability of the mine had been reduced, that they used to have full crews and full fire engines and full training to prevent things like this happening. But in an effort to save money, they'd been cut down, and I think the mention was they now had 1 tanker for the entire mine.
Now, you, of course, are in no position to evaluate those claims.
Absolutely none whatsoever.
But that's what was being said.
That's what was being said at the time.
I understand. Now, you also took, I take it the photos that are included in your statement are just a selection of the photos you took on the night, or is this all of them?
No, I think from memory there's 148 of them.
Okay.
It was a quiet night.
The remaining photos in your statement are ones that were taken later in the evening. Was it getting light or a bit before?
Towards dawn.
Towards dawn.
It became a lot easier to take photographs and see what was going on.
Yes. Right. We might just go through those. So image 4, are you able... Is that the same...
That's the same area as in image 1. That's
right.
Exactly the same power poles. Actually, image 4 is probably closer to image 2.
Right.
But 6 or 1/2 dozen to the other.
All right. Image 5, if we can go to.
Image 5 is looking from the northeastern side of the mine back towards the power station across the main valley of the pit.
So,
power station is there.
yes.
You can see the fires in the centre of the pit. and the pondage.
Yep. So the vantage point is I think you just told us, in the northeastern side.
Yep.
So the fire on the northern batters, as you're standing there, was to your right. Is that right? To your left.
To my, sorry, dyslexia. One of the things I can't do is tell left and right.
Not helpful. Perhaps can you with a ruler, if you show us where you were, approximately where you were standing when you took
We
the
would
bat.
have been up in this area
Yes.
here, looking back towards the power station, fires in that area, pondage here.
Yes. So you're standing in the northwestern corner.
I would have said northeastern, but east.
West.
Oh, sorry,
West
northwestern.
left?
Yeah.
North.
Yep.
Straight up. Yeah. Thanks. If we can go back to image 6, please. Once again, similar position to where the last photo was taken. Is that right? The north?
Again, a little further to the east,
Yes.
further along the batters. That's as far as we could drive without driving into the actual burning area itself.
Yes.
We went up to have a look to see what we could do. There was this massive waterfall flowing down on the eastern side. It was totally involved in fire.
Yes.
On the western side, the fire suppression sprinklers were working. There was water coming down. There was no fire.
Right. So there might appear to be smoke, but it's not. It's water right in the centre of underneath that pine type tree. Yep.
Yeah. Up here there is what appeared to be a ruptured pipe.
Yes.
The water's flowing out of it. That is water flowing down across the road. Everything on the eastern side was on fire, smoke going up.
Yes.
The water provided the dividing line. If the water wasn't there, it just
Would have kept going. So the water's acting essentially as a fire break. There, you understand. And then image number 7.
That's driving down to the clean water pumps at the bottom of the mine, looking north towards the northern batters. The last photograph is that area there.
Yes.
The water is flowing down that area there.
The fire is burning
Fire,
east of that point.
no fire.
Yes. We can go on to image 8, please. Can you? That's a photo according to paragraph 28 that you took at 6:08 a.m.
Could have been 5:08 a.m.
Well, it says 7:08. I've made,
Okay,
I've made the
sorry.
adjustment. Yeah. And are you able to orient us what part of the mine we're in here?
That's the clean water pumps. I'm standing on the top of the clean water pumps at the bottom of the mine.
Yes.
We were sent down there to defend the clean water pumps. It's looking probably south-southeast. The main staging area and the power station would be up over that rise there. This entire area of the hill is on fire, fully engaged, smouldering fairly deeply. There was a crack in the earth that you could see approximately 6 feet down into that was just glowing red embers. This was some form of water pipe, and you can see the tanker from the mine spraying water on it.
I see. For completeness, we should just look at the last 2 images. Image 9, is that this?
That's the towers, or the same power lines that were in image 8. I just took that photograph because the fire had hit something up in the scrub. It looked like old or something rubber-based, possibly a conveyor belt or something that just exploded.
Right.
Went up in flames.
We can
Gave
see-
a huge ball of black smoke. And
Yes.
I went, ooh, black smoke.
And finally, image number 10.
Clean water pumps looking towards the northern batters again.
Right. Morwell in the background.
Yep.
Thank you. What time did you finish up at the mine? What time did you leave?
Approximately 10 a.m.
And exhausted, not surprisingly, as you say in your statement at paragraph 32. You went back to the fire station at Traralgon
Yes.
in the tanker.
Yep.
And you make the point that you weren't offered transport to get home. That is from Traralgon back to Hayfield.
Yeah.
How had you got to Traralgon in the first place?
In our own vehicle.
Right. Has it been your experience on other occasions that transport is provided home to you, or what's the...
It just would have seemed nice if they had offered somebody to drive us. Yes, it was an emergency situation, but we'd been up and on call for well over 24 hours by that stage.
Yes.
And we were both pretty zonked. We put the radio on and talked the whole way home just so that Ken didn't fall asleep. It wasn't a pleasant drive.
All right. So that's Monday morning, of course, at 10 a.m. And on the following day, there was a debrief at the Hayfield fire station.
An informal debrief. Yeah.
Informal debrief. What you're able to summarise what was the outcome of that debrief?
Basically, a lot of people were suffering from symptoms that appeared to be similar to carbon dioxide poisoning. Monoxide?
I think you do mean carbon monoxide.
Carbon
That's
monoxide
what you say
poisoning,
in your
sorry.
statement.
Yeah.
What were those symptoms?
Headache, nausea, just general feeling of not being well. I had a mild headache. It was suggested to me that I should go and get checked out at the hospital, which I did do. While I was at the hospital, I met two other members of the Hayfield Brigade there being checked out. I later heard that 6 members in all, Hayfield and Cowar, had gone to the hospital there.
Was anything said to you at the briefing when you arrived at the mine about dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning?
We were given a carbon monoxide meter and told if it bleeps once, you've got 8 hours of time in the area before you have any ill effects. If it bleeps continuously, get out. That was it. It would bleep once occasionally as we drove around.
Right.
Which we weren't told that there was a level reading on it or sort of how much or what or anything other than just basically if it starts bleeping continuously, get out.
You were given that by the person that conducted the briefing,
Yep.
were you?
Yep.
And had you had any previous experience of exposure to those sort of conditions?
Only years ago in the Air Force, but just very basically what not to do. Don't go into confined spaces that you're not sure of.
All right. Not in your time with the CFA?
No.
And you mentioned in paragraph 33 that there was a sign on the whiteboard at the Hayfield station saying no one from the Hayfield CFA would go back to fight the mine
That's
fire.
correct, yeah. There were a lot of quite unhappy people after what had happened to our initial strike crew. I joined CFA in Cowar, which is why I'm a member of a Cowar brigade.
Yes.
But we built the house in Hayfield, which is why I'm now 2 minutes from the Hayfield brigade. So I turn out more often with Hayfield than I do with Cowar. So I'm a sort of a joint member of the two brigades.
Yes.
I feel obliged to, if the captain in Cowar gives us a directive. If the captain in Hayfield gives a directive, then I'm not going to breach that. even though Kawa was still sending members back to the mine.
You say at paragraph 35 that in the discussion at the debrief, or you say there was no plan in place to fight the fire, but we had to do the best we could, and that it was a nightmare from start to finish. Is that your own perspective, or was that said by others at the debrief?
That was my perspective. It was also the perspective of everybody else that had attended that fire. Right. It still is. Now,
you go on in your statement to talk about... sorry, I withdraw that. You didn't return to fight the fire at all at the mine, but even though you live some 50 kilometres away, you were still aware of the smoke that emitted from the fire whilst it burnt for the next 6 weeks.
On quite a few mornings we could smell it. There'd been a lot of fires in the area, but there was excess dust falling around our house. My wife could smell it far more than I could. We could see the stain of brown smoke on the horizon, and when we went into Traralgon to do our shopping, it stank.
Thanks very much, Mr. Steele. Members of the board have any questions for Mr. Steele?
No questions, thank you. A couple of questions, if you would, Mr. Steele. Just in your statement, you say that after you arrived that you were given a mud map on an A3 piece of paper, is that right?
We were shown the directions that we needed to go through on a...
And you were not provided with a proper plan of the mine?
When I met with the lawyers at the first meeting up here, they actually had a plan of the mine that had everything laid out, where everything was, and clearly showed the roads, the locations and the equipment.
Yes. And you didn't get one of them?
My understanding of a counter-disaster plan is that a map like that should be immediately available to everybody who is involved in the disaster, so that they can see exactly where things are and where people are supposed to go. There was no such map.
That would plainly be desirable, wouldn't it?
Sorry?
That would plainly be desirable, wouldn't it?
Oh, hugely. Hugely.
You understand this was a situation of a true emergency that was occurring on this day. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And did you understand that they'd lost their power to the emergency control centre?
That generally happens during an emergency. That's why you have emergency plans.
I take it that's why you do understand that they'd lost their power to the emergency control centre.
That happens during an emergency.
I take it you do understand that?
Yes.
And you did at the time?
Sorry?
And you did at the time?
Yes.
And you also understood, did you, that to get light in there, you would describe that to have the diesel lights outside, shining light inside the building. And as a result of that, they were unable to print out plans for all of the emergency crews on that day.
I would have assumed that they would have them already printed out and ready to go, ready for an emergency. They wouldn't have to rely on printers. They would actually have the plans printed and ready to go in their emergency kit.
Yeah, okay. So that's your complaint about it, that they should have had...
That's one of my complaints about it, yes.
I understand that. And so then you were then sent across to the northeast part of the mine, near the briquette factory?
Correct.
And I think you say that you waited for about 20 or 30 minutes for an electrician to come after you had an issue with the power line?
Well, we nearly ran into the power lines in the dark, yes.
Yeah. And you had to wait for...
We had no idea if they were live or not.
Yes. And you had to wait 20 or 30 minutes for the electrician to come
Yep.
out? And you would have understood, wouldn't you, that the electricians might be well and truly diverted trying to restore the power, which might be the cause of the delay? Or was your complaint they didn't have spare electricians on that would have been able to
I would have assumed, given the scale of the emergency, that every staff member that was necessary would have been called out, and that a power station would have more than 2 electricians on staff.
And did they only have 2 electricians on staff?
That was my understanding.
From whom?
From the 2 electricians that turned up. They said, look, we're running around trying to do everything, and there's just not enough of us. Sorry.
Not enough of us?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's why you assumed that there weren't other electricians, in fact?
I would assume that there were a lot more. I would have assumed that there were a lot more electricians working in a power station than 2 people. I would have assumed that, given the scale of the emergency, there would have been a lot more people that could have been called on, especially seeing as it was almost 8 hours after the emergency had started.
You don't know how many electricians they had working.
Of course not, no.
Please let me finish the question, and I'll let you finish the answers. Is that okay?
Yep, fine.
But you don't know how many electricians they had on at that time trying to sort out a number of electrical problems that had caused the breakdown in electricity.
I would have assumed that there would have been a large number of electricians working. It surprised me that it took so long to get 1 or 2 electricians out to check a set of power lines.
Okay. And then you said you were putting out spot fires in the northeast of the mine, and you ran into difficulties because of terrain and fences. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And at that stage, you passed over a fire burning under a bridge.
Yes.
And there were some burnt-out vehicles around.
Yes.
Were you aware that at that stage you were in fact outside the mine area, north of the briquette factory?
No.
You weren't aware of that? In an industrial estate to the northeast of the mine?
We were told that we were on the mine site. We had not gone through any gates to leave the area. Can we call up the photograph again?
No, you don't need to.
I would like to.
Excuse me. The question I'm putting to you is that there were no burnt-out vehicles on the mine site. Does that surprise you?
It does.
No fires burning under bridges on the mine site. Does that surprise you?
It does.
Do you accept, therefore, you may have been in the industrial estate? It was dark.
Can we call up the photograph and I can confirm where we were?
No, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm putting propositions to you, simply to the effect that there were no burnt-out vehicles on the mine site, no fires on the bridges, and I'm wondering whether that makes you doubt whether you were on the mine site.
Respectfully, I would disagree with you, and no, I don't doubt that I was on the mine site. I am reasonably certain that I was on the mine site.
Okay. Are you familiar with the mine?
No.
Had you been there before?
No.
Okay. Now,
can I point out that we were told that we were on the mine site?
Yeah. You were told by somebody you were on the mine site?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were told by somebody they only had 1 tanker at the mine now? Is that what they told you?
That's what we were told.
Yeah. And you were told that they were closing the mine down soon?
No.
You weren't told that the reason why they didn't cover the banking clay because the mine was closing down?
It wasn't that it was immediately closing down. It was that the company believed that it would close soon, and they didn't want to put any extra expense into, how shall we say, unnecessary expenses,
And
or what they considered unnecessary expenses.
did they say to you that others said that the company had promised to cover the banking clay, but because it was closing down, it was too expensive and left it? Were you told that?
Words to those effect, yes.
And so, if I told you that that's completely wrong and the company is planning to stay there beyond 2025, they had 4 tankers on the site, all of which were operating on the day, would that make you doubt that maybe some of the things that you were told were true?
I'm repeating what I was told.
Yeah. And so it could well have been complete nonsense as far as you know, don't you? I take it that's a yes?
Yes.
Now,
what did surprise me was the level of anger and the disappointment that the mine workers were expressing. They were extremely concerned and angry at the level of mine safety. They were extremely concerned and angry at the level of the disaster and that it had been allowed to get so far. To my own personal recollection on the radio, as we listened to as we drove back to Kowar, on the morning after the disaster, or after I was at the disaster,
I didn't ask
a manager of the mine, if you excuse me, let me finish, and then you can ask your question, sir.
If you could just answer my question.
What was said on the radio the morning after was that the manager of the mine believed that this fire would be out in 2 weeks. Now, Ken and I looked at each other and said, absolutely no way. The manager of the mine said, this fire will be extinguished in 2 weeks. And we both looked at each other and said, this guy has no idea what he's doing.
So that's what you and Ken said at the time?
That's what Ken and I exchanged
Could we
at
go
the
to
time.
paragraph 28 of your statement, please? Towards the end of the paragraph, you said that the base of the mine, which looked like a pile of tyres, was burning. Now, you don't say that a pile of tyres were burning, but if I was to tell you that there weren't any tyres on the site, you would agree with that proposition and say that it only looked like a pile of tyres.
All I can say is that it looked like a pile of tyres burning. I wasn't going anywhere near it.
And
It was the whole area was a pile of extremely hot burning coal. There were spot fires coming off it. That's why the tankers were there. Our job was to defend the clean water pumps. Unfortunately, there were no hydrants or nowhere we could access water. Between the two tankers, we had 7,000 litres of water, and there was no way that 7,000 litres could have controlled that fire had it come down the hill.
paragraph 35, you make reference to the CFA debriefing. I take it was a CFA debriefing
It was an informal debriefing.
that you went to do the following day. Was it a CFA debriefing?
It was held at a CFA station.
When you say informal, was it just a group of you getting together without a CFA official?
As is normal. Our captain was there, our 2 lieutenants were there, and all the crew that were available who had been involved in the fire were there. It is fairly standard CFA procedure to get together after a fire and to work out what worked, what didn't work, what was successful, what we did well, what we could improve on.
Okay. And there you discussed a number of the conditions and the problems that arose during the course of the disaster, is that correct? And you mentioned that there was some talk about a lack of effective fire breaks. Did anybody there suggest that they'd actually undertaken an assessment of what the fire breaks were?
What was said was, I'll try to quote it as closely as I can, the brigade was fighting the fire to the east of the river diversion, that when the fire came along the highway, jumped the river diversion, there was no way of accessing the mine site, and that there was no fire breaks in place to stop the fire from entering the mine.
Did they say the northern gateway was closed to the mine?
No, the northern gateway, to my understanding, was very difficult to get in because it was secured, but when it was opened, it only allowed one vehicle through at a time. The side of the hayfield tanker was bashed in because they tried to follow the tanker in front and the gate closed on them. To my way of thinking, that's not an exceedingly good access method for an emergency situation.
This is again based on things that were said to you. Was it back at the...
Well, I actually saw the side of the tanker and it was very well bashed in.
Yeah, and the method by which it occurred, was it on the basis of what you were told?
Exactly, yes. It was also included in the statements from the entire crew on board the hayfield tanker at the time, which if you care to check with CFA, they will have on record.
And was there any discussion about the fact that the causes of the fire were in fact the ember attacks from 2 different fires, being the Driffield fire and the Hearns Oak fire? Was that discussed?
My brigade, Hayfield, was fighting the Hearns Oak fire, so they only had information about the Hearns Oak fire.
They didn't know about the Driffield fire?
They knew about the Driffield fire, but they weren't actually engaged in fighting on it, so they didn't make comment about it.
Did they know about the driftfield fire coming in from the southeast at all?
Of course they did, yes.
Thank you very much.
Just to clarify one matter with you, please, Mr. Steele. You were asked a number of questions by my learned friend, Mr. Reardon, about whether you had left the mine site or not. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
During that time, where you made those observations of the cars and so on, were you under escort by the mine employee that was escorting you?
Yes.
And at any time did that mine escort take you outside of the precincts of the mine?
Not to my understanding. The briefing was to protect the infrastructure of the mine. We were told that these power lines were important because they were supplying power to the mine. Now, my understanding was that the mine was surrounded by a wire fence and had gates. We didn't exit through any gates. We didn't cross through any wire fences. The buildings we were working around appeared to have Hazelwood labels on them. They may have been outside the mine, they may have been inside the mine, but we were protecting mine infrastructure at the time.
I understand. Members of the board have any questions for Mr. Steele?
Can I point to the...
Yes, please do.
My understanding that the power lines were there. On this morning here, there was a large sign that had collapsed that had Hazelwood Power written on it.
Yes.
It had fallen down and the scrub underneath it was still smouldering. We put our gloves on and we lifted that sign and we extinguished the fire underneath it. There was a water hydrant in front of this building here that we refilled our water from. We never went, there was no fire to the north of that. There was no fire to the east of this road. The bridge that we crossed over was this bridge actually in amongst these trees here. So if that area is outside the mine site, then I will accept that yes, we were outside the mine site. If that area is inside the mine site, then we were inside the mine site. I have no idea whether it was or whether it wasn't. That was the area we were working on.
I understand. Just for the benefit of the transcript, the areas that you've been pointing to are in the northeast corner of the mine in the vicinity of the area which has been described as the rehabilitated area, east of that area and south east of that area.
So that is actually a mine site owned by Hazelwood Power?
To be honest, I don't know, Mr. Steele, but those behind me may be able to clarify that if it's needed by the board.
Yeah, it's outside the boundary. It's in the Morwell industrial estate. If the board wants evidence of that, we'll call them.
Sorry?
The area indicated by the witness is outside the mine area. It's in the Morwell industrial estate. If the board requires evidence, it can call.
With that clarification, could Mr. Steele please be excused? That concludes his evidence. And Ms. Richards will take the next witness.
The next witness is Alan Roach. Could Mr. Roach please come forward?
Please state your full name.
Alan William Roach.
Please raise the Bible and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
to this Board of Inquiry
to this Board of Inquiry
will be the truth,
will be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Good afternoon, Mr. Roach.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for attending today at quite short notice. Can I start by asking you your full name and your address?
Alan William Roach.
And you are employed at the Hazelwood mine.
Correct.
In what position?
I am the Security and Emergency Services Manager.
And how long have you worked at the mine?
In that role or for the company? For the company I've been with it since 2010.
Right. And the company being GDF Sewers?
For GDF
Hazelwood.
Sewers, that's correct.
And in your current position, how long have you been there?
About 18 months.
Now, Mr. Roach, have you made a statement in relation to the events of the 9th of February?
Yes, I have.
But not to the inquiry?
No.
To whom did you make a statement?
I've made a statement to the Arson Squad, Victoria Police.
Do you have a copy of that statement?
No,
No.
not with me today.
Sorry?
No, not with me today. No, I haven't.
No, but do you have a copy generally?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do.
Would you be able to provide a copy of that statement to the inquiry, please?
Yes, I could.
Thank you. Now, in addition to your substantive role as the Security and Emergency Services Manager, have I got that right? You are also an Emergency Services Liaison Officer.
Correct, yes.
And we're now familiar with your the Emergency Response Plan at Hazelwood, and we have some understanding of the role of an Emergency Services Liaison Officer, or ESLO. One of your roles, and it may be as an ESLO or because you're the Emergency Services Manager, is to liaise with the Central Gippsland Essential Industries Group. Is that correct?
I represent GDF Sewers on that committee. It's correct.
All right.
On that group.
Can you tell us a bit about how that group works?
It's a group of essential services industries throughout the Latrobe Valley, also from West Gippsland, but also East Gippsland as well. And we meet bi-monthly, every second month, and we purely discuss emergency situations, security situations relating to the industry.
All right. And the other members of the group are the other power generators in the Latrobe Valley.
Yes.
So that's, if I've got it right, AGL and Energy Australia. AGL in relation to Loy Yang A and Energy Australia in relation to Yallourn.
Yallourn.
And also Diamond Protection, who does your security at Hazelwood, is also a member. Hancock Plantations.
Correct, yes.
Are there any other members?
APM.
APM.
GDF Sewers Loy Yang B.
Yes.
Exxon Longford.
Right. And the emergency services are also represented on the group, are they not?
Government agencies, yes, that's correct.
Yes. Being the CFA, the Fire Service, and the SES and the Police.
And Ambulance Victoria.
And Ambulance Victoria. So it's really a meeting point between the emergency services and major industries in the Latrobe Valley and also Longford. Now, there is a protocol in place for communication between the emergency services and essential industries in Gippsland, is there not? And that is that it takes place through the Central Gippsland Essential Industries Group.
It may.
It may. The normal circumstance is that it will.
There's a structure of command or management team through CGIG. So normal communication, yes, that may be the case.
Yes. And what is the structure of command through the group?
Nick Demetrius is the chairman.
Yes.
So through normal actions, Nick would receive information, and whether it be just from day-to-day communication back to our bi-monthly meetings, that chain of command would be Nick.
All right. So he's the point of contact for...
He's the chairperson.
Yeah, he's the chairman, and so he's the person who emergency services in the Latrobe Valley go to if they have some information to share with members of the group.
May.
Usually do.
Yes, they may go to him, yes.
Yes.
Most of the time they will go to Nick, yes.
Yes. And that's what happened on the 8th of February this year, is it not? There was contact made with Nick Demetrios of the Central Gippsland Essential Industries Group about the fact that the Hearns Oak fire was burning to the west of Morwell.
I have been made aware, yes, that there has been some
Yes.
communication
Yes.
from the ICC to Nick.
And you became aware because Mr Demetrios contacted you, is that correct?
On the 8th of February.
On the 8th of February. Now, how did he first get in touch with you on the 8th of February?
I believe he sent me an email, and then there was a phone conversation to my mobile.
All right. Now, we've had a look at this email before, I think. If we could have on the screen, please, attachment or annexure 7 to Mr Harkin's statement. And I think you have a copy of it there. It's an email that's obviously been printed out by Mr Harkins from you to him on Saturday the 8th of February at 6:41 p.m. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And it is forwarding an email to you and to a Mr Nash at Energy Australia, who presumably is the contact point at your lawn, an email from Mr Demetrios.
Yes, there's an email that came from Nick to me and Mark,
Right.
and I have forwarded the email on to Steve Harkins.
All right. So the email from Mr Demetrios to you appears to have been sent just before 4:30 in the afternoon. And it says, "Team, this is the latest mapping from the Phoenix model at 0100 hours tomorrow night. Worst case scenario, this may be the fire protection," sent from my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
So where were you when you received this email?
From my recollection, I believe I may have been travelling around the Traralgon area.
All right, so did you receive it on your phone?
I received it on my BlackBerry, yes.
On your BlackBerry? And were you able to view the photograph that's attached to it?
Not on the BlackBerry, no.
No. So what did you then do?
I'll forward it to my webmail address.
Right?
I've got access to that at home. That's the Papa Roach address.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've arrived at home, I've had a look at the picture.
I need to ask you, Mr Roach, is there a Mama Roach address as well?
I'd rather keep that information private.
I beg your pardon, that was completely inappropriate, that question.
Unfortunately, I must, to the best of my ability, answer all questions that you...
No, and I withdraw that one, and there's no compulsion to answer it at all. So you forwarded it to yourself so you could read it on a computer with a screen, is that correct?
At home, that's correct.
And when you did that and you had a look at the attachment, what did you make of the information?
I had a phone conversation with Nick. So I've rang Nick once I've...
What did you make of the information when you finally managed to look at it on a screen where you could see it properly?
I didn't understand it.
You didn't understand. So you rang Mr Demetrios?
Yes.
And about what time was this?
Bear with me. I believe it would have been sometime between around 5:30, 5:45.
Okay. And you spoke with Mr Demetrios, and what did you say to him?
Tell me about the map. Tell me what it all means.
And what did he say?
The first thing he stressed to me was that it was worst case scenario, that he had been to the ICC to some briefings during the day. That the map related to a timestamp of 1 o'clock on the Monday morning, and it was all the information that he'd had. And we'd look at some more information on the Sunday.
Okay. Did he tell you any more than that?
We discussed the map to
Yes.
see what it all meant, how we could understand it, because I had a fair bit of difficulty determining what it all meant.
Yes.
From my discussion with Nick, I was trying to determine what impact it had on Hazelwood. What was the threat, what was the time frame, and when was it all coming together? So we discussed a bit further about this Phoenix modelling at sometime between 1 and 2 o'clock on the Monday morning. The northern batters of the mine may be under some form of threat.
All right. Now, did Mr. Dimitrios explain to you that Phoenix is a model that predicts what may happen given a particular scenario?
From my recollection, the discussion we had about the Phoenix model was that if there was worst case scenario, if there was a limited fire protection to that fire, to an outbreak of fire through that period of time. So the key things I was talking to him about was impact on the mine, 2 o'clock on a Monday morning, if there was limited impact firefighting in that area. So it really was the worst case scenario.
All right, but as the emergency services manager and the emergency services liaison officer, you would be interested in knowing what the worst case scenario is, would you not?
Yes.
Because that's the scenario you have to be prepared for, is
And
it not?
that's what I was asking Nick about.
Yes. And so the worst case scenario is that, judging by the timestamp on this prediction map, that by 1 o'clock on Monday morning there may be fire right on the northern batters of the mine.
Correct.
Now, did you arrange to speak with Mr. Dimitrios later that evening or the following day?
The following day.
The following day. Now, we know from the email that we've been looking at that you forwarded this on to Mr. Harkins.
Correct.
And there's one prediction map forwarded on to Mr. Harkins. Did Mr. Dimitrios provide you with more than one prediction map?
No.
No. So this one, with the timestamp of 2/10/2014, 1:59 a.m. is the only one you saw.
That's the only one that I saw. That was the only one included in the email. That was the only picture that I saw for that day.
Okay. Now, you sent this on to Mr. Harkins. Did you send it on to anyone else?
No.
No. And you say in your email to Mr. Harkins that you just wanted to keep him in the loop. He doesn't have a role in fire preparation or response at the mine, does he?
He's part of the significant incident management team.
Yes, he is, but when it comes to emergency command or enacting the emergency response plan or making fire preparations because of a threat of fire, that's not his role, is it?
No.
And he doesn't manage the people who are responsible for that, does he?
Correct.
Now, those people are Rob Dugan and Dave Shanahan, are they not?
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't pass this information on to them.
No.
Why not?
At that point in time, I required more information.
What information did you require?
I required more information from the weather situations for the next day.
Yes?
And from the discussion with Nick, we were going to meet up in the morning
Yes?
to see if anything else was coming out of the ICC.
All right. Let's deal with those in turn. What information did you require about the weather?
If there were any changes to what was being predicted.
Now, the weather forecast for the 9th of February was for a very hot morning, was it not?
Mm-hmm.
Temperatures reaching around, if not in excess of 40 degrees,
Correct?
with a very strong northwesterly wind,
Yes.
ahead of a southwesterly change at around lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
And there had been a total fire ban declared for the 9th of February already, had there not?
Correct.
And the fire danger rating for the Sunday the 9th was extreme.
Yes.
What further information did you require?
Nick had provided me a model from that information.
I want to know what further information you required about the weather.
Changes.
Did you not rely on the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast?
Yes, I was getting those.
Yes?
Yep.
Were you not prepared to assess the risk based on the forecast?
I would have been, but as a collective with SEGIG, Nick and I had made an arrangement to contact each other the next day to see if there were any changes to what we already knew what was going to happen.
All right, but you knew what the weather forecast was on the Saturday afternoon.
They was going to be shit.
Yeah, it was.
Would you like me to clarify that?
No, I'm just wondering what further information you required about the weather.
I wanted to have a conversation with Nick the following day to see if he was aware of any other changes, whether it be weather, whether it be information he was receiving from the ICC, but that's what we were going to talk about the next day.
All right. Did you apprehend on the evening of Saturday the 8th of February that the fire weather forecast for Sunday the 9th was the worst since Black Saturday?
Yes.
You did. You understood that clearly?
Yes.
Were you hoping that it would turn out not to be as bad as forecast?
I think all of us were. Hoping.
Yes. And was that why you were prepared to wait until the following morning before you passed this information on to anybody who could act on it?
No, but I didn't think the information at that time was relevant. I could not understand it. And it was telling me information that was going to happen with this fire at 2 o'clock on the Monday morning.
Did you ask Mr. Demetrios whether he had any more detailed Phoenix prediction mapping?
On the Sunday?
On the Saturday evening we still are?
No.
No. Did he tell you whether he had any more detailed Phoenix prediction mapping?
No.
No.
I'm quite sure if he did, I would have received it.
Now, moving to the Sunday, you were rostered on as the ESLO that day, were you not?
I was rostered on as the ESLO for a 7-day period, which included that weekend.
Now, where did you start the day?
Home.
And when did you meet with Mr. Demetrios?
We had a phone conversation, according to my records, around 11:30.
Yes. And by that time, the temperatures were in the high 30s, if not the 40s, do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
There was a strong northwesterly wind blowing, was there not?
Yes.
And the weather conditions had turned out to be exactly as the Bureau had predicted the previous day. It was nightmare fire weather, was it not?
It wasn't a good day fire weather-wise, that's
Yes.
correct.
Now, what information did Mr. Demetrios provide you that morning?
There was no change.
No change?
From the information that we had on the Saturday, that there were no changes.
All right.
We were still expecting the wind change coming through in the afternoon,
Yes?
the same wind speed, but no changes to what both of us knew in 2 or 3 days prior to the event.
And did he provide you with any information about the status of the Hearns Oak fire as at 11:30 that morning?
We may have had a conversation on the Hearns Oak fire.
Or did you not?
I can't recall.
Did you understand that that fire had been had been contained but not controlled?
I've been monitoring the condition of the fire through the CFA website.
All right, so you'd gone directly to the CFA website for that information?
Yes.
And you understood that the fire was contained?
Fire was contained.
Which is not controlled and it's certainly not safe. You agree that that's the hierarchy of
I
classifications?
agree with you
for
that the fire was contained.
Yes. But given the fire weather conditions, you must have been aware of the possibility that it would flare up.
I was aware that the fire was contained through the information from the CFA website. I'd had a conversation with Nick on the phone. I was comfortable with the environment for the plans that we'd had for the day. And then I moved on for the day.
and you decided not to share this Phoenix map with Mr Shanahan or with Mr Dugan?
Not for information on the fire that was going to occur at 2 o'clock on a Monday morning, no.
You're placing a lot of reliance on that timestamp.
Well, it's critical.
Yes, but you didn't understand that this might be the end point of a situation that would develop throughout Sunday?
I didn't understand the modelling. I wanted more information on it. I spoke to Nick about the process.
Well, why didn't you go and ask for more information,
I did.
Mr Roach? And who did you speak to?
I spoke to Nick on the Saturday night in relation to the modelling.
Right, now what's Mr Demetrios's role? He's the chair of CGIG and he works at Loy Yang as what?
He's the Security Emergency Services Manager for AGL.
All right, so he has the equivalent position to you at Loy Yang A, is that correct?
You'd have to ask Nick.
He is not a fire behaviour analyst, is he?
Once again, you'd have to ask Nick. I don't know.
Did you say, look, I can't really understand this, I need to get in touch with someone who can explain it more fully to me?
No, the conversation we had on the Saturday was that we would have more information on the Sunday.
All right, but on the Sunday you didn't have more information and you still didn't understand the full import of this map. Did you try to get in touch with someone at the Traralgon ICC who were managing the Hearns Oak fire for a fuller explanation of the implications of this map?
No, I didn't.
No.
Excuse me, Ms Richards. You said, Mr Roach, that you were comfortable with the plans you had in place for that day. Could you just articulate what those plans were?
We had our fire mitigation plans, which had been issued by, was either Rob or Dave Shanahan on the Friday. And I was comfortable that those plans were in place, were going to achieve any threats or risks that we'd had over the weekend.
Achieve or address?
Address.
Had you turned your mind to the need for anyone to be in place to step into the role of emergency commander? Had fire threatened the mine as the map suggested it might?
I believe the plans that we had in place were sufficient.
No, that's not what I asked you, Mr Roach. Had you turned your mind to the need for someone to be on site on the 9th of February to step into the role of emergency commander should fire threaten the mine?
Yes.
And what did you decide to do about that?
That was the shift supervisor for the mine.
Okay, that's Mr Ian Wilkinson, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, we have a situation where the director of the mine was on leave, the mine production manager was on leave, and Mr Kemsley, the technical compliance manager, was also away, and that left the most junior of all of the possible emergency commanders on site. Is that the situation you recall?
I wouldn't necessarily call them the most junior.
Well, perhaps not in years, but in terms of the organisational structure of the company.
No, well, under the plan, it's a 24-hour process under that plan. That role is covered by the shift supervisor in the mine.
All right. You didn't see a need to have someone standing by so they could step into that role promptly should fire break out in the mine?
Not with the information that I'd have received.
Now, I take it at some time during the 9th of February you arrived at the mine. When was that?
12:27.
Now, how is it that you can be so precise, Mr Roach?
Because I manage an electronic gate system on site,
All right.
and it's from those gate records that I had at that time.
And you've actually done a bit of a reconstruction of your movements on the day, have you not, and prepared a spreadsheet that records those as best you can?
A log of events.
A log of events. And I've been provided with a copy of it. Nobody else, apart from the mine's legal team, has it, but I'll make a copy of that and tender it subsequently. So you arrive at 12:27, and what did you do from that point?
From that point, I drove to the control centre, and I spoke to the control centre attendant, and we had a discussion about the condition of the site, condition with the weather, and how the day was going to pan out for us.
All right. I take it that copies of this document have now been made available. No, the witness has got his own. All right. So you spoke to the control centre attendant. That's Mr. Murray, is it? Jeff Murray?
Correct.
All right. And after you had spoken with him, what did you do then?
I'd observed that there was some smoke from the Hearns Oak fire. I was moving between... When I first got on site, I travelled from the rear slide gate to the mine control centre. Whilst travelling along, I was able to observe that the Hearns Oak fire was just a couple little puffs of smoke.
So you could see that it was still burning, couldn't you? Yeah.
Yes, there was a small fire there. Yes, it was still burning. Once I left Jeff, at 12:45, I went to the emergency control centre and opened the building up to prepare it.
All right, and that's the emergency control centre in the... It's used for training when there's not an emergency.
That's right, that's the mine training facility.
All right, what was the first time you became aware that the fire at Hearns Oak had become more serious than you'd previously seen?
Just referring to my notes. I received a phone call at 13:20 from the gatehouse to state that the Hearns Oak fire was flaring.
All right, and what did you do at that point?
At that point, I left the mine training centre and went back to the control centre to speak to Jeff Murray.
All right. And what did you tell him?
What did I tell him? We had a conversation of what was occurring with the increasing fire activity from Hearns Oak, and he advised me that he's had the diamond protection crew active and heading towards the mine.
All right, so where did they have to come from?
They were at the gatehouse.
Right. And at that point, realising that the Hearns Oak fire was now active, did you get back in touch with Mr. Demetrios and say, situation's changed, I need some more advice?
No.
All right, so having called the diamond protection crew in from the gatehouse, what other steps did you take to get ready?
I didn't call diamond protection at the gatehouse.
No. Sorry,
You
asked Mr. Murray to do that.
No, I didn't. Jeff Murray rang Diamond and told me that was what was happening.
Right.
So we've got diamond protection crews moving from the gatehouse towards the open cut.
All right, what other steps did you take?
I had a conversation with Dave Shanahan and asked Dave to open up the northern gates in the Drilling Depot Road area.
All right, so he went and did that. And then you have recorded on this this spreadsheet that at 1400 a mine fire alert was issued. Was that your decision?
No.
No, whose decision was that?
I don't know. No. It would normally come from operations, whether it be the control centre attendant or the mine shift supervisor. It's activated inside the control centre.
All right. When did you first become aware of the Driffield fire?
I believe I first became aware of it around that 1400 mark. Actually, I've got a 1407 fire heading towards the Driffield area of the mine.
And what did you do when you realised there was a second fire to contend with?
I wanted to get out there and have a closer look, see what was happening with the activity.
Again, did you get in touch with Mr. Demetrios?
No.
Did you get in touch directly with the CFA at that point?
No, not at that time.
All right, so you went out to see what was happening. Where did you go?
Our first port of call was at TP5
Transfer point 5. And why did you go there?
I was in a vehicle with Matt Waddell.
Right.
Matt was doing a tour to turn on some sprays, to ensure sprays were turned on.
On the operational part of the mine?
On those conveyor systems, yes.
Okay. So you were out in the field with someone who was actually attending to the fire protection measures?
Checking
Checking?
that they were operating.
Okay.
Not necessarily state that he was actually turning them on. All he was doing is going around inspecting to make sure that they were operating.
To make sure that they were on. All right, so when did you first become aware that there was fire inside the mine?
1428.
And where were you when you first saw it?
Can I refer to the map?
Yes, please do.
If you look at, we're at the control centre here. We left the control centre with Matt Waddell and we went to TP5, which is this area here. Travelling along this road into TP5, checked the sprays, made sure the sprays were operating, and then we travelled from TP5 around the perimeter of the mine, and there's a lookout along this area through here.
Right, that's the
lookout design along these areas there.
Yes. So that's the lookout that looks, it's a very good vantage point
Yes.
over the working area of the mine. All right, and you saw fire inside the mine for the first time, and where was the fire that you saw?
While I was at the lookout, fire was burning in the Driffield area,
Mm-hmm.
and to a wind direction strong southwesterly, it was heading straight across the mine, and I've observed some smoke and fire activity along these areas around here.
All right, so right over at the eastern edge of the northern batters.
On the northeast side, that's correct. That's the first time that I'm aware that there's fire inside the mine.
Inside the mine. All right, so that's a vastly more serious situation even than the very serious situation you were aware of half an hour previously.
Correct.
So what action did you take at that point?
Referring back to my notes.
Mm-hmm.
At 14:28, I've observed the fire activity.
Right.
At 14:30, I've rang Ricky Ross at the Regional Control Centre.
All right, so why did you ring the Regional Control Centre?
Because Ricky Ross is one of my quick links through communications into that stream of chain of command.
All right, but the Hearns Oak fire wasn't being managed from the Regional Control Centre, was it?
I'm not aware of that.
No. Did you not know where the Hearns Oak fire was being managed from?
No.
No, you hadn't found that out the day before?
Well, there may have been communications from Nick that he was getting information from the Incident Control Centre.
But you hadn't taken the step of making sure that you knew where the Hearns Oak fire to the northwest of the mine was being managed from.
Can I have the question again?
All right. I'll ask you a couple more questions before I come to it. You've got here recorded on your spreadsheet that at 14:30, when you were still at the Southwest Lookout, you phoned Traralgon RCC, Ricky Ross. He gave me the ICC phone number, and then the phone number's given there. Is it correct that at 2:30 that afternoon you did not have the phone number for the Traralgon ICC?
That's correct.
And so you needed to ring Ricky Ross at the Regional Control Centre to find out what that phone number was.
No, my thought process was to ring Ricky Ross because I believed he was at Traralgon ICC.
So you rang him on his mobile phone?
Yes.
Had you taken any steps the day before to find out who was the incident controller for the Hearns Oak fire?
No.
No? Or how to get in contact with him?
No.
Or how to get information from the incident management team?
No, the Hearns Oak fire wasn't a threat for me on Saturday.
Despite the fire weather forecast of strong northwesterly winds on Sunday morning?
Fire was contained. It wasn't a threat for me on the Saturday.
And despite having seen the prediction map that showed that by 1 o'clock on the Sunday morning the fire was right on the Northern Batters?
No. Monday.
Sorry, Monday.
Yep. That's what the timestamp says.
Yes, and that's the end point of a process. You appreciate that?
I keep referring back to it, yes, because people keep saying it's Sunday morning. That's
Yes,
not
it
correct.
wasn't going to happen all at once at 1 o'clock on Monday morning, was it, Mr. Roach?
No, a process of events would give it so that at 2 o'clock on the Monday morning, that would be the end result.
Yes, and that process was likely to unfold during the Sunday, was it not?
Possibly.
All right, so at 4:30 you obtained the phone number for the Traralgon ICC. Before you rang
that's
that
not
number...
correct. You said at 4:30, that's not correct.
Sorry, at 14:30 you obtained the phone number for the Traralgon ICC. Before you rang that number, did you ring 000?
No.
Did you check that the control centre attendant had called 000?
No.
All right, so when you had the Traralgon ICC's telephone number, what did you do with it?
I rang it.
When?
Just looking through the log. It would have been sometime between 14:30 and 14:43.
All right, so you spoke with Peter McHugh, who we know from other evidence is the planning officer at the Traralgon ICC. You say you gave him a sit rep. What did you tell him about the situation at the mine?
Yeah, I received a phone call from Peter at 14:43.
You received a phone call from him?
Yes.
Okay. Was that returning your call?
Yes.
All right. And what did you tell him about the situation at the mine?
That we had a fire located in the Driffield area.
Mm-hmm.
There was a strong southwesterly wind that was blowing the fire across the open cut,
Yes.
and embers were falling and fire was spotting inside the open cut.
Right. Did you tell him anything else?
I can't recall any further of the conversation. There may have been a couple of things we discussed, but at this point in time I can't recall anything else that we discussed.
All right, so just to be clear about the information that you conveyed to Mr McHugh at 14:43, it was that there was a fire at Driffield on the southwestern side of the mine. There was a strong southwesterly wind, and what was the last thing you said? There was fire. There was
The fire was
fire
spotting in the mine.
into the mine. Did you tell him that there was a fire burning in the northern batters of the mine?
I can't recall the total conversation I had with
No.
Peter,
And is that
but
because
in my recollection it was wording as if it was spotting,
All right.
if embers were falling inside the mine.
And is it the case that your main concern at that time was the Driffield fire because of its location and because of the wind behind it?
My main concern at that point in time, number one, was we now have fire burning inside the mine, but secondly, the control of the Driffield fire before it gets to the southwest corner.
All right. Now, you weren't the nominated emergency commander, were you? Were you aware of any measures being taken to suppress the fire that was burning in the northern batters?
I was aware that fire crews have been sent into the mine because when I got back to Jeff Murray, there was crews sending into the mine for asset protection.
Now, you had another telephone
And I'd
conversation.
also heard some radio traffic from the shift supervisor
Yes.
in relation to the sprays and sprays being turned on.
Right. You spoke with Mr McHugh again in the course of the afternoon. When was the next time you spoke to him?
$15.47.
So about an hour after your first conversation.
Yes.
And what did you tell him about the situation at the mine?
That we had fire burning inside the mine, and it was really a repeat of the information I'd given him an hour earlier, that there was still fire in the Driffield area.
All right. And what did you give him any information about how the mine was responding to the fire inside the mine?
I can't recall.
Did you tell him that the fire was beyond the mine's resources and that the CFA was needed?
No, I can't recall having it in that conversation.
You spoke with him again shortly afterwards. Your log of events tells us.
Yeah, 1552.
Yes. And why did you call him back?
Because I had received further information
Yes.
that the fire on the northeast side of the mine was now spreading.
Right. And again, did you say to him, this is more than our resources can handle, we need CFA assistance?
No. Not that I can recall the conversation.
Or anything to that effect?
I can't recall everything that I spoke to Peter about in that conversation. It was more just giving him a sit-rep situation of what was happening with the fire behaviour.
Okay. And then you spoke with him again, and I'm just trying to get the time. I've got a handwritten change on this.
Yeah, there's
on
a
the
change
version
in that
front
book.
of me.
The first entry I made in my handwritten notes was actually 1800.
All right. And I should be clear, you did make some handwritten notes.
Yep. Yes.
And these were annexed to Mr. Harkin's statement. Could we have those up on the screen, please? So this is page 58 of Mr. Harkin's statement. And when we turn it around, and we get to the top of the page.
Yes, let's go through to page 2.
All right. So those are your handwritten notes.
They're my
are they?
handwritten notes, correct,
And,
yes.
and you made them as you were going on
the
the
day.
9th of February?
Yes.
All right. And the one you're looking at it says there 1800 Clean Water Pump Station Aerial Protect, Peter
Yep.
McHugh. Now you're
I
going
believe I made that entry at 1600.
All right. And is that even though it appears below the 1645 entry? So you've made an entry at 1645.
Yep.
That I think says Matt Waddell, tanker number 2, MWN substation, Ballara, Beaconsfield. And all of the other entries in this log that you kept on the day.
Most of them are in chronological
Most of
order.
them
Not
are
all
in
of them, but
chronological
most of them
order?
are. Yep.
All right. But you believe that the one that you've corrected to 1800 was in fact made at 1600?
Yes.
All right. So that was the third conversation with Peter McHugh in the space of about 10 or 15 minutes. All right. And what did you say to him at that point?
Just want to refer to my notes just for a second. The conversation was relating to some aerial support
Okay.
for firefighting.
All right. Now, the full note that appears on this this log of events is phone contact with Peter McHugh. Clean water pump station requires aerial protection. Peter begins emailing me aerial photos to pinpoint critical infrastructure.
Correct.
Now, at that stage, did you say to him, we need assistance?
Yes.
Yes, and you needed assistance in the form of aerial support.
To critical infrastructure, things like our clean water pump station.
Right. And what is the reference to the emailing you aerial photos?
Peter sent through photos or aerial photography that he had on the day, and we were going to have a conversation on whereabouts on these photos was the critical infrastructure. MWN substation, the clean water pump station. So it would assist him with the aerial attack.
To pinpoint where they are.
Yep.
All right. So this is an email at 4:05 p.m, which is another reason for supposing that that conversation took place at 4 o'clock rather than at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
And the subject of the email is your lawn open cut.
Yes.
And there are a number of photographs attached to this email, are there not?
That's correct.
And mainly what you see is smoke. Is that fair to say?
No, that's not correct.
No? Perhaps.
Mainly what I see are photos of your lawn open cut.
Yes, through smoke. Are there any photos in this bundle of the Morwell open cut or the Hazelwood open cut?
I've been unable to identify any photos of the Morwell open cut.
No. All right, well, I'm glad it wasn't just me. So those photos were of no assistance?
No assistance whatsoever. When these photos were received, I had Romeo Precioso was in the room with me.
Mm-hmm.
We printed them off in an order, and when we first looked at them, we haven't got them up on the screen, have we?
All right. So did you get back in touch with Mr. McHugh and say, sorry, the photos are no use, but
Yes.
we still need help?
Yes.
And when did you do that?
I haven't logged that phone call.
No. From your memory, and I appreciate that it was a busy time and
There was a lot going on.
You weren't writing down everything that you did. From your memory, when did you speak with him?
At the latest, it would have been possibly 6 or 7 minutes after I received the email.
All right. And what did you say to him when you spoke?
From my recollection, I can recall saying something like, excuse me, Peter, these photos are of your lawn open cut.
Mm-hmm.
And they're of no use to me. I can't do anything with them.
And did you have a discussion with him about how he might pinpoint the critical infrastructure that you were concerned about?
I don't recall having any further conversations with him about the photos.
No.
As I said, we were fairly busy at the time.
Understood. All right. There is a conversation that you've logged in your log of events at 18:18. A further telephone contact with Mr. McHugh at the Traralgon ICC.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about the location of the Driffield fire, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe I'd heard some radio traffic before I made the phone call with Peter that the Driffield fire had reached the river diversion. Had not crossed,
Yes.
but it had reached it.
Right. And at that stage, did you pass on any information to him about the fires that were burning inside the mine?
No.
No. And at around this time, the power went off and you were distracted by the need to attend to that. Is that fair to say?
We had a lot of stuff happening on the day, yes.
All right. Now, I just want to be clear. You had several contacts with Mr. McHugh at the Traralgon ICC during this time. The mine's emergency response procedures make it crystal clear that the first thing to be done when there is fire in the mine on a day of total fire ban is to call 000.
That's correct.
Yes. I take it you didn't call 000 at any time that afternoon.
No.
Did you check whether anybody else had?
No.
No. Now, Mr. Roach, you've been referring to a number of documents there in front of you to assist your memory. Do you mind if I have a look at them just before I sit down?
You may already have a copy of the activity log. And these are just my handwritten notes from day one.
And there are some documents on the right-hand side as well that you're looking at.
Are these the emails that I have with Nick?
Ms Richards, while you're looking through that, I might just ask Mr Roach a question, please. So could we go to page 50 of Mr Harkin's statement, please? So this is the email chain from yourself to Mr Harkins, saying, which is sent at 17:41, and then Mr Harkins responds to you, Mr Roach, at 7:28. And Mr Harkins says to you, thanks. I'm not sure I understand, but I think it says the Northern Batters will be on fire. Could you tell me what happened when you received that email, please?
I believe Steve and I had a phone conversation after he received the email.
And what did you discuss?
The Phoenix modelling.
Did you answer his question? I'm not sure, but I think it says our Northern Batters will be on fire.
We had a look at the map and we discussed the modelling of the map that could be the case at 2 o'clock on the Monday morning.
And did you talk about your response?
Well, I shared with him that I was catching up with Nick the next day. I think we may also have had a conversation of the understanding of the model. I'd never seen it before. And even though I'd had a conversation with Nick, the only thing I could draw from it was that worst case scenario, with no firefighting, with no fire protection, at 2 o'clock on the Monday morning, the Herns Oak fire could be reaching our Northern Batters.
Now, thank you for letting me have a look at these. I just want to check with you about how you looked at the Phoenix map that was sent to you on the Saturday afternoon by Mr Demetrios. Did you print it out like you've printed out this email here?
I believe I just looked at it on the screen,
All right.
on my computer.
And what was the size of the image that you were looking at?
Well, it took up the computer screen.
All right. Thank you. I've no further questions for Mr Roach at this time. Nobody's had a chance to know what he was going to say. Mr Wilson may have some questions.
We no questions, thank you. No questions.
I would like to tender, if I might, the log of events that Mr Roach has provided.
Exhibit 25 will be that you choose to include along.
Well, the log of events, the other documents are already in evidence annexed to Mr Harkin's statement. And when Mr Roach provides through GDF Suez' lawyers his statement to police, I'll ask to incorporate it in Exhibit 25. Thank you.
On that subject, that does come as a surprise, and having regard to what has happened in arrangements involving Detective Inspector Roberts, may we suggest that the proper course is that Mr Roach provides the document to our friends, but before it goes any further, we have an opportunity to... Thank you very much.
That concludes the evidence today, if Mr Roach might be excused. Thank you, Mr Roach. And I can give an outline of what we propose to spend tomorrow doing. Tomorrow, as I've indicated previously, we'll be focusing on the discrete topic of firefighter safety. There are 3 witnesses who have provided statements in relation to that. Mr Lapsley has provided a separate statement. Mr Harkins has provided a second statement that includes in it matters relating to the safety of the mine employees and contractors who were involved in fighting the fire. And we have also this week received a statement from Robert Kelly of the Victorian Work Cover Authority. We also have a community witness, Tracy Lund, who is the coordinator of the Morwell Neighbourhood House. And I I should probably also mention, because there'll be others here who are interested, at around lunchtime today we received notification from the United Firefighters Union that they're proposing to appear tomorrow and seek leave to appear in relation to tomorrow's topic. So I guess we'll just have to see how that unfolds.
At 10 o'clock.
Thank you.